They say the veil between this world and the spirit world is thinnest on Halloween. I never used to believe in this saying, but unfortunately, ever since the incident took place, I now do. And here's why. It was Halloween night back in 2019. I was with some close friends and my younger sister, Jill, and we were at a place called Valley of Terror. Valley of Terror is a haunted attraction with hay rides, cornfields, and haunted houses. It was a pretty cool place to go if you didn't like to do the traditional trick-or-treating like we all did. By the way, I was a 22-year-old female at the time of the story, and my sister was 10. Anyway, we had just finished up the haunted cornfield and decided we wanted to check out the haunted house next. The place wasn't that busy, so we were able to go between attractions quickly. When we got inside the house, it was like walking into a trippy nightmare. There were mirrors, flashing strobe lights, and smoke, making it hard to see. I remember my younger sister was holding onto my hand for dear life when staff dressed as zombies would pop up out behind corners and scream in agony. We were getting to a part in the haunted house where we entered a small room. It was empty and dark, all except for a clown in the corner with a chainsaw cutting into a severed leg. I remembered at first how disturbed I was because of how real the blood and veins were hanging from the leg and how malicious this clown looked. The clown's laugh was drowned out by the chainsaw, which I also thought was extremely lifelike. Then the clown took a massive bite from the leg, fake blood dripping from his mouth, and shouted, "Happy Halloween." My younger sister and I finished the haunted house, laughing at how much fun it was, but I could tell my sister was a little disturbed by the chainsaw clown part. Now, to set the record straight, I'm not a Karen, but I did want to let one of the staff members know that the clown part of the haunted house was a bit too extreme, especially since younger children came there. And here's where my night was flipped upside down. I found a staff member close by the haunted house and told him my concern. He had a confused look on his face and told me they don't have any clowns with a chainsaw in there. I swore up and down that there is indeed one in there, and it was a little too lifelike. The staff member radioed for other staff and put a halt to people entering the haunted attraction. When they finally came back out, they informed me of the grim reality. They did not find a clown inside, but they did find the leg that he was cutting into. My stomach dropped when they said it was not a prop leg that they found. It was a real one. They locked down the entire place. No one could get in or out, and we were stuck there for hours. When the police did a complete sweep of the area, no clown or chainsaw was found, only the severed real leg. And this was what still boggles my mind. How could there be a real severed leg with a bite mark, but no clown to be found? My only explanation was what I said in the beginning. On Halloween, the veil between this world and the spirit world is the thinnest. I truly believe that clown wasn't a clown, but rather an entity. I know it sounds crazy, but what other explanation is there? My younger sister and I no longer go to the haunted attractions on Halloween anymore. We stick to trick-or-treating, but we are very mindful that the veil between this world and the spirit world is at its thinnest. Stay safe, everyone, and happy Halloween.
This happened to me 5 years ago on Halloween. My friends and I always threw a Halloween party every year at his house. We would get the usual candy, sodas, and order pizza, and not to mention the horror movies. This has been a tradition of our friend group since 4th grade. I love fall, and I mainly love Halloween. This story, however, might be the breaking point. We were in my friend's basement watching movies and hanging out when we heard a knock on the door. And to hear a knock on the door on Halloween was nothing out of the ordinary. However, this was. Remember how I said we were in the basement? Yeah, well, there is a door in the basement that leads to my friend's backyard. The knock came from there, not the upstairs, and if that was the case, we wouldn't have worried since his parents were up there giving out candy while we hung out in his basement. As soon as that knock on the basement door happened, we jumped. We paused the movie and none of us had the courage to go out to see who or what that was. We might have thought it was my friend's dog, since he hung out in the back. But when we heard the front doorbell ring and his dog bark upstairs, our hearts dropped. My body got cold and sweaty. I've never wanted to be in this situation before, but again, here I was, in that exact thing I hated thinking about. Someone was out there, so we ran up and told my friend's parents. At first, they showed little concern about this, and so we felt maybe we were just babies and needed to relax. So we went back down to watch more of the movie. About an hour or so had passed, then we heard another knock, only this one was different. It was much louder than before. It sounded like the door was going to break open or something. We paused the movie again, and this time, all of us were annoyed, so we decided to confront the person knocking. But when we opened it, however, no one was there. How? Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw what looked like a white mask standing in the pitch black over by my friend's edge of the yard, where the fence was. "Look," I said. My friends and I were startled by the realization we had just made. There was definitely someone in his yard, so he closed the door and told his parents there was someone in the yard. Still, his parents just said you were watching too much of the movies and you're scaring yourselves. I was baffled that they were not believing us, but again, it was Halloween, so I don't blame them at the same time. So we just went back down like nothing had happened. We started to watch another movie when yet another knock happened. This one again was louder than before. We were really on edge now, and we couldn't enjoy our night since we knew that someone was just hanging out in the backyard of our friend's house. We decided to go upstairs and hang out with his parents and watch the movie they were watching. Funny enough, it was the same movie, and about the same spot we had left off, so we took it as a sign. Then the doorbell rang, so my friend's mom got up and grabbed the candy bowl, but as she did, another knock came from the front door. We all looked surprised, like the person had just not rang the bell before, and now they were knocking. She opened the door, and no one was there. We thought it was a funny prank, but then his mom looked pale for a second, and I remember the scream his mom made when she yelled, "The window!" We all turned, and there he was, the man in the white mask. He ducked below the window so he could not see him anymore. His dad went out and confronted the man, but when he came back, he said he was gone. We called the cops and filed a report, but the man was never found. This happened 5 years ago. However, we still hold the annual parties for Halloween. Nothing has happened since that day still, and I'm thankful, so maybe he just wanted to scare us once or something. I guess we'll never know for sure. Happy Halloween, everyone. Stay safe.
Have you ever used a Ouija board? Or better yet, have you ever used a Ouija board on Halloween? I don't recommend it, and here's why. I've always lived by this motto: fuck around and find out. Yeah, I know, it's not the greatest wisdom in the world, but it served me well in life, and definitely in this story. Anyway, on Halloween night, a couple of years back, one of my good friends was throwing a Halloween party at his place. His parents were gone for the weekend, so he had the whole house to himself. It was mandatory to wear a costume if you wanted to get in, and I ended up going as Maverick from Top Gun. And for context, I was an 18-year-old male senior in high school at the time. But back to the story. The party was actually pretty fun. Well over 40 people showed up. There was music, booze, and crazy costumes. It was a pretty typical Halloween party, but everything changed when someone asked to do a Ouija board. It was one of my buddies, Mark. He asked me and a few others if they wanted to go to the basement and use the Ouija board. I only had one beer at this point, but instinctually my answer was no. I did not play with any of that stuff, because I truly believed you shouldn't mess with spirits and stuff like that, especially on Halloween night. And after being called a bitch multiple times for not wanting to join, I told them to fuck around and find out why you shouldn't do a Ouija board. They laughed at me as I watched Mark and a few other guys head down into the basement to do the Ouija board. Around midnight, the party started to die down, and I left, sober, and drove back home, not even checking on Mark or the other guys after they went down into the basement. When I made it back home and lay down in my bed, I got a text from the host of the party asking if I was okay. I said yeah, I made it home safe. He responded back saying okay, good, because Mark and the other guys who ended up doing the Ouija board all got into a car accident when they left the party. I immediately called Mark, praying that he was okay. On the third ring, he picked up. Mark explained that he was okay, and so were the rest of his passengers. He was driving them home from the party, sober, when he said he felt this unnatural force twist at the steering wheel. The car swerved and crashed into a ditch. Mark explained that other than a few bruises and cuts, he and the passengers were okay, but the car was totaled. Mark also explained that all the passengers who were with him were the ones who also did the Ouija board with him. I couldn't resist and told him that he fucked around and found out. Mark hung up the phone on me. To this day, we are still good friends, and even he will admit the crash and the phantom hands grabbing the steering wheel had to be directly linked to the Ouija board, like some kind of spirit followed him. And I'm truly glad that he and everyone else were okay, because the crash could have had much worse consequences than a totaled car. So, my advice to you is to never do one, especially on Halloween, because you might just fuck around and find out. Happy Halloween.